Now for our next power pairing, solutions for dismantling barriers and accelerating equity. Please welcome Misty Copeland, Principal Dancer, American Ballet Theater. Tchen, President and CEO, Time's Up Now and Time's Up Foundation. And moderator Maggie McGrath, Editor, Forbes Women.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for this really important conversation. I am thrilled to have two boundary breakers here with us, barrier breakers, and I want to dive right in and start by asking, Misty, you've been so outspoken this year, and it's been lovely to see you speaking across the internet about the needs to advance racial equality in the world of dance. I heard you say earlier this year that this is the first time in this moment that you feel truly heard. So I'm curious to hear from you, and I want to start on a positive note because there are so many challenges. What do you feel like you've been able to accomplish because you are now being heard? What are you most proud of?
Oh, first of all, thank you for having me. It's such an honor to be on this panel with you, Tina. It's really been a shift in the way I think ballet dancers are viewing themselves, especially Black and brown ballet dancers. And for me, I've been speaking about the lack of diversity and racism in ballet for 20 years of my professional career. So, don't see, and I don't think anyone does, George Floyd's murder as his death is in vain. It's brought about so many positive awakenings and reckonings, and within the ballet world, it's given, I think, so many Black dancers, it's empowered them to have a voice, and I think that is something that dancers don't often have. I think that we are often voiceless because we use our bodies to speak and to tell stories. And so this has been a real moment for me to not feel like I'm alone, which I feel like for the most part of my career that I have amazing power behind me, but vocally I seem to be the one on the front lines. But now I feel like it's my moment to step back and support other Black and brown dancers who deserve to be heard and who represent me and all of us in the ballet world.
Definitely something to be proud of. Tina, I'll turn to you. Time's Up Now just produced its annual report about the accomplishments of the year. There are still so many challenges ahead of us, and we'll get there. But I want to ask you, what are you so pleased to have accomplished this year, and what our audience should know is a key accomplishment?
Oh, well, thank you, Maggie, and thanks to Forbes for having me. And can I just say how much I love being on this panel with Misty Copeland? Misty came to visit us when I was working in the Obama White House, and I tried usually to be professional and not fangirl, when we had special visitors, but I totally fangirled when Misty came and asked for a photo on my phone. So love her, love everything she does, and just her dancing is so beautiful, but her courage and her voice is so important. So, at times of like everyone, we had to pivot in March, right? Everything we thought were our plans for 2020 kind of went out the window. I'm really proud of the way our team did pivot, very early on. Our Time's Up healthcare team, many of whom, were of our founders were ER docs, people like Derek Hass and Esther Chu, who people have gotten to know from the work they're doing to fight the pandemic. We quickly pivoted to support women on the front lines, really put that term together and started putting out the voices of the women who are overwhelmingly our frontline workers trying to keep us all healthy. Then we actually quickly put together a guide to equity and inclusion in time of crises, which anyone can get. It's open source. You can text the word leaders to 30644 to tell companies how to maintain their work on equity and inclusion during crises, because it's not just nice to do things when times are good. They are essential things to do even during challenging times. And then, finally, during the election year through Time's Up Now, our advocacy organization, when we saw what was coming at whoever would have been the woman nominee for vice president in the Democratic Party, the attacks that person was going to be subjected to from a racist and sexist and misogynistic lens, we started a coalition called We Have Her Back, where we ran from the moment that Senator Harris was named as the VP nominee. We monitored the social media and mainstream media every night. We sent out a blast alert to over 300 organizations every morning. on what to call out. We had over 15 billion people that we reached with really calling out the kinds of attacks that were coming, because I'll just end with this, Maggie, that kind of engagement was so important because it wasn't just about VP-elect Harris. It was about how we think about women leaders and what image and what message we're sending to aspiring women leaders and young girls coming along. And so I'm really proud of the work that we were able to stand up and do there.
I think you both hit on the importance of voice in your answers there, right? You can't face what you haven't named or haven't discussed. And I think those are huge strides that we've made as a society this year. And, looking in the world of ballet, Aisha Ash became the first Black permanent faculty member at the School of American Ballet. There was no permanent Black faculty member at this prestigious school before. So there have been huge strides across different aspects of society in the areas in which you work. But where do we go from here? What are the opportunities that you've identified? And I'll start with Misty, and specifically in the world of ballet, what do you want to see happen and what needs to happen for going forward?
It's overwhelming. I think that, my head has really just been in it again for the past 20 years of my career. And I feel like I've had a moment to step back and see how much more work we still have to do. The fact that, we're still seeing so many firsts in the ballet world and in the community and culture, I think speaks volumes to where we're at and how far we need to go. But I think the steps that are being taken in terms of, again, being heard, that's the only way we're going to be able to progress. Again, I've been speaking about this for so long, but if people aren't hearing me, then there's no way that they can understand how to take the next step. So I think that it's really about listening and having really honest conversations, which I've been having within the ballet community and within my own company at American Ballet Theater, to be able to have companies from all over the world, artistic directors of schools calling me to hear me. That to me is huge, to really not just be putting my face on a diversity initiative and saying, yay, we're doing something, but to have people behind the scenes asking me real questions about how they can make change. That to me is the most growth, in the past, 6 months is the most growth that I've seen in all of my years in the ballet world.
Tina, you've talked about how in this digital world that we're all living in, we're not at work, so the pay inequities or the harassment isn't as obvious. Women might not be talking to each other at work in the same way. That to me seems like a goal to fix, or it's a huge task to fix that. But what are you looking at in terms of opportunities, in terms of pushing change forward in 2021?
Well, let me start with that, the working remotely, because one of the things we know is that harassment doesn't stop when you're working remotely. And we've been urging managers, to make sure you're paying attention to what's happening in the chat rooms, during the Zoom calls, and that people have a way to reach out, because it's a little bit harder when, to actually reach out to your HR and report something than it is to wander down the hallway when you've summoned up your courage. But we need people to do that, and we need managers to think more intentionally about that. But on the point of what's to come, I have to say that out of every crisis, there's an opportunity. And the opportunity now for change is people's eyes are opened to the struggles that women are facing in a way that has never been before. And that's an opportunity. I'm really fortunate. I know Melinda Gates was on earlier today. We've had support from Melinda and Pivotal Ventures at Time's Up to have an impact lab and a research arm to actually put data and metrics and track these. So we are launching Time's Up, Measure Up to really do that during this recovery period and track over the next 3 to 5 years what's really happening with women and putting that out loud and clear. And then finally, I know earlier panels have been talking about caregiving crisis, and we are in the middle of that. That is something that women across the board, are really leaving the workforce. Women's labor force participation in the US is down to 1986 levels. This cannot continue, and building a caregiving infrastructure is one of the ways we can address that.
That is such an important point. But I want to go back to your point about Melinda. I think creating partnerships has been such a crucial way of moving forward. I think one of the big themes of this year, and we've heard it before, well, as to Misty's point, right? We've been talking about this for years. 2020 is not the first time, but allyship isn't enough. We need advocates, we need accomplices, we need partners. So I'll start with you, Tina. How have you found effective partners in doing your work? How can the women watching this panel find partners to help them create change?
Well, I will tell you, as time's up, we've only been around 3 years. And so we are somewhat the new kid on the block for women's organizations who have been out there for a long time doing this work. And so I approached this with some humility as a good partner, right? And not wanting to do something that's already being done really well, but how can we amplify that and be partners and working together? And I think that's so important. That's not just as an organization, but as an individual, finding what's out there in the landscape and that you want to join and be a part of. I mean, the good news actually about this Zoom world we're in is it's not that hard to join a summit, right? Instead of having to travel to New York, to participate here with Forbes, you can just dial in and you have an opportunity now to look at how much is out there and then find the issue that really speaks to you and jump into it and be allies. And then one more word about allies, I have to say, I often say with only 7.5% of Fortune 500 CEOs as women, that means there's like 93% of these men who we have to get engaged. And they, to your point, need to not just be sideline allies mouthing the words, they need to be engaged and advocates in order to make this change. And that's one of our goals, is to make sure that they are part of that.
That is such a good point. It is not just on women to fix these issues. We need all genders gathering together and pushing forward. Misty, I want to ask you the same question about partnerships, because I think the ballet world is in a different place, as you and I were just talking about before we jumped on. Can you talk to me about how you've identified partners, if any, to help your advocacy and activism in pushing racial equity forward?
We definitely are in a very different place. I feel like from the rest of the world, it's almost like we exist in this bubble, this beautiful fantasy bubble, where the ballet world is just now, learning to crawl. So it's developing those allies is really where we're at, and I don't even think that we're ready to start this kind of partnership step. But all we can do is follow the flow of where we're at right now, and that's what it is. But what I can say is that as a Black woman who's a ballerina and is a voice for this community globally, I've been fortunate enough that I do have allies from ballerinas all over the world, and with a relief effort that I helped to create called Swans for Relief. I think that it speaks volumes to that first step of where we're at, bringing together 32 ballerinas from 22 different professional companies and from 14 different countries, to have them entrust in me, and respect me as a Black woman leading this ballet community. I think that's the first step to then, go to the next level of partnership and being able to progress and really understand and be more than allies.
Can I just say, Maggie, I just want to jump in to say what Misty is doing is not just within the ballet world. We're all paying attention on the outside, and we all know how hard it is in this ballet world and institutions to struggle with it. And what she is doing is sort of a beacon, and an ally across the board for so many of us in all sorts of domains. You really are, Misty. You are just this voice, and the power of it and the courage that you have is something so many of us admire. And I just want to have that opportunity to share that with you.
That means so much. Thank you. Thank you.
I will echo that. And because we've been talking about voice so much, I think you've both used your voice so well and so eloquently that it can seem easy. But I think for some women, it can feel hard to step up, speak up. For the people who think that I don't have any power, who am I to speak out in terms of change? What would you tell them? What advice do you have?
Well, you have to start with your own story. What Misty sort of outlined earlier is part of it. You start with what you know and your own story, as she has started in the ballet world. But as I said just now, that message, don't underestimate the degree to which your story will resonate outside of your life, with other people who are struggling with caregiving, or kids at home at school, or a parent who's ill. Just your story, the authenticity of that is so important. And telling these stories could not be more important right now. We need to put a face on what women are facing during this pandemic, up and down the wage scale. This is something for folks who are in the C-suite. It's something for folks who are working on an hourly basis, trying to put food on the table. That commonality of experience right now is actually a strength for us. And we need people to just overcome that inner voice that says, I'm not important, and understand that you really are. You really are. It is, I'm so in awe of the nurses who are speaking out, the teachers who are speaking out, the moms, folks who are staying at home, moms who are trying to struggle with the Zoom call at work and the kid running back, behind them. It's hard. And to get ourselves through this and onto a better place, the objective here is not to go back to normal pre-pandemic. The objective here is to build a better normal when we come out. And that's what I'm hoping for in this next year.
That is so true. But it is tough work. So I do want to get from both of you a little bit of advice on how to forge forward when it feels so hard. Misty, how do you keep going when it just feels like this has been such a hard year? We're all separate. These are really heavy issues. What keeps you motivated and strong?
Yeah, I'm definitely an optimist, and I'm constantly, seeing. I feel hope and the silver lining in everything. I even think about this time and how much the world, but for me and the world that I'm in ballet, how much we've grown and how it's opened up these conversations that I don't think would have happened. Because we've been perfectly capable of staying, right on track of where the ballet world has thought they've needed to be for all of these generations. But I feel that, the more that we empower the youth to feel supported and to speak up and to explore their creativity, it's just the youth to me is the future, and that's how we move forward. And it's really exciting that I think the ballet world and the dance world and the arts world has a real opportunity to make big changes and to recreate what theater even means and how it's relevant and in the world we live in today. I think it's an amazing time for us to reset and be leaders as artists in this world.
We only have a minute left, but you previewed my last question, which was helpful. As we look ahead to 2021, what hope do you have for your community and for women at large? Tina, I'll put you on the spot first.
Well, so, my hope is sort of where I ended my last answers. I really do think we're in a moment of historic change. Gloria Steinem said, you may not always know you're in a moment of historic change, so you should treat everyone like one. Well, guess what? We have no doubt. We are in a transformational moment. And that's exciting. I mean, it can be heavy, but we should view it as exciting, the opportunity to really be part of a historic change forward. And actually that gives me hope, and it gives me, the opportunity and the way forward for 2021. And how much excited are we to turn the page on 2020? So yes. Let's go to 2021 with that.
Any last
yeah.
words?
I think opening up the floodgates and seeing so much ugly and our differences, that is how we start to rebuild and create an amazing beautiful future and change. So I see a promising next year and world for us.
I love that optimistic vision. Thank you both so much for your thoughts and being here today. We so appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.